Welcome, everybody. I am Judith Dold, as she mentioned, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you to the library for having me. And today, whoops, my slides are, there we go. Phew. Today's focus, we have a lot to go through. So I'm going to go somewhat quickly. I love presentations where my hand is cramping up because I'm writing so many notes. So my hope is to impart as much wisdom as I can and strategies for you to use moving forward. And this is a specific focus on ADHD. So there's a specific model we'll get into that I really like in terms of explaining the ADHD experience, both for those who have it to understand more about what's going on in the brain, and also for those who might have a loved one who have it. We're also going to talk about one critical thing for ADHDers that has to be in the mix. Otherwise, nothing's happening. And this is something that a lot of people miss. And then a lot of my clients talk about this gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. So we're going to talk about ways to get that activated, get going. And then at the second portion, I'll briefly go through the steps to organizing any information, any different types of data, any rooms in your house, storage units, you have it. There's this process that you can use for that. And we're going to have you thinking about during this presentation the whys and what's driving you towards the things that you want to accomplish, and that's going to help tremendously. And a lot of folks have told me of embarrassment about why can't I just do such and such. And a lot of the work that I do with people is to help them gain confidence and understand what's going on with the ADHD, and that it's just something that's there that they can learn to work with in a much healthier, more confident way. So that is my intent for the end of the presentation. So we're going to go ahead and dive in just very briefly. Again, you guys will all have the slides afterwards. You can look at them later. I've been organizing since 2015. That's when I opened for business, worked for a lot of other organizers. Became a certified professional organizer in 2021. I had to sit for an exam from an accredited body like universities have, and had to have a certain number of hours to sit for that and to study. And just about a month ago, I finished a 1.5 year advanced coaching program specifically for ADHD. I knew that coaching was going to be really helpful to my organizing clients, but I also wanted to help those with ADHD in a different way. So I've completed that coursework and have been using those skills ever since I learned them in the beginning of those courses. I also have some certificates through the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. That's ICD right there. And I attend conferences throughout the year to get the latest information. I've read quite a number of books as well. Periodically, I will give quote unquote book reports in my newsletter so people don't have to read and I can download to them what I think the best information was. So what we're going to jump into first is Thomas Brown's model of executive functioning. Thomas Brown is a researcher and clinician based out of Southern California, and he has come up with this fabulous way of making sense of the ADHD experience. Executive functions are the pieces of information and the functions that go on in the front part of our brain to help us do all sorts of important things that we do throughout the day. And he's broken them into 6 different areas. There are other models that other experts have created. I think this one is really straightforward, which is why I typically show this one. The first one is activation. The second one is focus. The third one is effort. We've got emotion. Now, emotion is not, as far as I understand it, not part of the diagnostic criteria for ADHD, but both Thomas Brown and Russell Barkley have said in webinars that the one of the biggest complaints, the biggest things that people are dealing with is this emotion regulation with the ADHD. So that's a piece of the puzzle here. You've also got the memory and then action. So these are all the different areas. And feel free, I'm not going to be able to look at the chat necessarily right now, but you can put in there so other people can see too which ones of these resonate. And when I do these presentations and explain this model, a lot of people say everything, right? You don't have to have all of them to have ADHD, and you can experience these challenges without having ADHD. It just so happens that those with ADHD experience this on a much larger scale. It's and more frequently, and the challenge is deeper. Some of these are impacted strictly by aging, but much more with ADHD. Okay, so we're going to dive right into this first one, and what I'm doing is explaining this model with a lens for ADHD getting things done, productivity, and really wanted to help people understand what's going on and how to work around some of these things that they've been bumping into or you've been bumping into as you've tried the information that's in all the books and TV series and all that you've listened to. So hopefully you'll get some more information based off of that. So let's dive into this first one, activation. That really means getting started. So what I want to say about that piece is a lot of people say, I just need to get started. And I will typically smile and say, let's not use the Nike slogan here, just do it, right? Because the word just makes it sound like you just jump in and go to it. But a lot of times there's a whole bunch of steps that have to happen. And there's this gap between what you intend to do and getting started. So if you've been saying, I just need to do it, I should just do it, you might want to think about, okay, maybe I'm trying to bite off too much at once and I need to figure out how to start this piece. The movie scene is a concept where you can walk yourself through a project that you want to do. And this is if you're a visual person. If some people can't see images in their head, but if you're able to do that, you can focus in and kind of from a director's cut, watch yourself walking through or going through these activities. And in that way, you can see various different steps that are involved in the process. And that's a piece of organizing your information, organizing all the bits and pieces you have to get together to get started. And then what we've got is prioritizing. This one can be really challenging. A lot of my clients talk about feeling overwhelmed with what they have to do. The horizon is flat. Everything feels as important as everything else. And we want to be able to see peaks and valleys in terms of importance and priority. Because if everything's flat, we can't possibly know what to look for. So by trying to have the important things rise to the top, and you can visualize being on a mountaintop and looking through and seeing the important mountains come up, then that can help with that prioritization. Now, sometimes that mountain might be, for instance, a volcano that erupts in terms of, oh, it's urgent. It became a mountain all of a sudden. But we want to start to notice things before it gets to that point. And that will be other pieces of the puzzle as well. So you want to be able to slow down, take stock, and the prioritizing can happen in many different ways. Um, you can get help with it as well. This becomes really important. If someone doesn't have that skill set yet, you can talk through it with someone who's really good at this piece of project managing, for instance, and get help on that piece, or do it more organically and See how that feels. Then we've got activating. Now, again, activating is getting started. This is the action piece. A lot of people know what to do first, but they're having a hard time doing it. And there's a reason for this. We'll get into that in a bit. But if you're stuck and you know what to do, but it's the doing that's difficult, there are a few things here that you can do. One is to create movement, and this could be physical movement, right? Get up, you could listen to some music to get your heart rate up, get you energized. And it does sound a little funny, but I can say anecdotally, I've tried this before on tasks I haven't necessarily wanted to do. And I would put on a pretty good set of headphones, and the sound quality comes through amazingly in a way that I didn't even know music could come through before. And put that on, or if you have a speaker, what have you, and get up if you can, or if you're sitting, just let the music that you like energize you. And sometimes that can be enough to roll you into action. This past Judith thing, this is a tactic I have tried on myself with humor, and it has worked. So a lot of times with ADHD, there's the now and the not now. Everything else that's not happening right now, it feels way off in the distance. And so there's this disconnect between our current selves and any emotional connection with the future version of ourselves that is going to be living with the ramifications of our decisions today. So sometimes what you could do is play this past self, future self, or in my case, past versus future Judith. So, for instance, I think the first time I tried this, there was a night I was pretty tired. I didn't want to wash my dishes. I'm not perfect at washing my dishes, just so people are not rolling their eyes, because dishes can be a hard piece for a lot of my clients to do. But I knew that the next morning was going to be hectic. I wanted those dishes clean. And so I tried this tactic, and I sat at the right there at the edge, and I said, "All right, Judith, you don't want to do this, but your future self is going to thank you." And a lot of times we're willing to do things for other people that we're not willing to do for ourselves. It was almost comical in a way. So I was able to do the dishes, and then the next morning when I got up and I went to the sink, I used my humor again and said, "Well, thank you, past Judith. This is lovely." And so it helped connect me emotionally to that future person who's going to be dealing with the ramifications, right? And that can be a fun way to do this, and think about, doing what you want to do rather than going off and doing something else. You can also use themes to activate you. So if you're having a hard time getting started with a particular project, you might want to put a theme to it. Let's say you are having to pay your bills. You might embody an accountant or a private investigator in terms of finding money for the IRS. Just make it big, make it bold, make it a little bit exciting. And those types of themes can help to activate the interest enough to get going. And definitely more rewards. A lot of people will say, I will reward myself when I'm done with XYZ, when I get through my taxes, or when I have decluttered this room. The challenge is that you've waited too long, especially with ADHD. ADHD need those with ADHD need rewards more quickly than those who are neurotypical. So someone who's a neurotypical might be able to do their taxes months in advance because the reward at the end is relief. Whereas someone with ADHD, that's not necessarily going to work. So they need to incorporate more rewards more frequently earlier in the process and throughout the process, even though it might feel silly that, okay, well, I just gathered all my receipts together. I'm going to reward myself. Well, it might feel silly, but at the same time, that is a step in the right direction, and you're reinforcing to yourself the correct behavior, the correct action that you want to take to reach your goals. So that's this activation piece. And then we dive into, gosh, let me pull this over. Let's see my own slides here. But this is a really key piece here is interest. Interest is the crux of the issue or one of the major issues for those with ADHD. If there's interest, things go great. If not, not so much. So I've got this poor woman here is looking quite fatigued and not interested. And so these are some things to think about with interest. So boredom fights activity and interest ignites. So it's all about this interest piece where if you're bored, it is much harder to get started or potentially impossible to get started on a task than if you're highly interested in it. So the classic example is the parent talking to whoever they might be working with to figure this out that, hey, my kid, I just don't understand it. I think they're just lazy. They can focus really hard at video games or playing with their friends or baseball or what have you, but at these other tasks, they can't focus. And I just feel like they're just not wanting to do it. And it's not a case of wanting it to, it's literally brain chemistry related. And if that interest is high, a lot of the executive functionings will not be affected. Whereas if the interest is quite low, those functions just poof disappear. So you want to be aware of this interest piece and also pay attention to whether the interest is positive or negative because interest, obviously, most of us think of interest in the positive way. I'm interested in this hobby. I'm interested in seeing my friends tonight. I'm interested in learning a new language or reading a book at the library, right? It can also be negative, though. So it can go into that rumination phase. For instance, oh, I'm not going to succeed if I really try to start decluttering my home. Or I'm always late for work and I'm just never going to succeed. And the thoughts snowball down, down, downwards in this negative spiral. And that is not going to help you activate to get started. The interest might be there because it's interesting, even though it's uncomfortable to have those thoughts, they're not really helping you to move forward. So this is an interesting concept to think about as well. So the less interest you have in a particular task that's involved in getting to your goal, the more scaffolding you're going to need. And by that, I mean the more support systems you're going to need so that you're not trying to white knuckle it on your own and power through this boredom and just do it, right? There are different supports that you can have. You could be working with a coach, a professional organizer. You can work with friends. I'll talk about this a little bit later. Having support systems in place, knowing that when you hit activities that are of lower interest for you, especially if they're repetitive, what can you do in terms of setting up a system to make it more likely to happen? So that means when you think about all these things, ooh, we get hopefully a little excited or at least more activated than we are when we're bored, which probably make a lot of us sleepy. Okay, so now we're going to get into the focus aspect. This is quite important as well. This is the classic piece that people talk about when they're talking about ADHD is this focus. And what a lot of people have said, especially in my coaching, is, well, I can't focus on that. It's boring. I'm just not able to do it. So we want to get out of that can't and figure out what kind of scaffolding, what kind of help do you need so that you can do this task. And perhaps it's even thinking about these things in a different way. So some of the things that we can do here with focusing is hunting for interest. So looking for anything within this process that could be interesting. Perhaps if you're doing your taxes, you might find a much easier workaround than you had before and find something that makes taxes easier to do next time around. Or you might not want to clear off your dining room table, but if you focus on the fact that you're going to be able to have your friends over or your family over again, that's interesting and that's exciting. And so that can help with that focus as well. Also, you want to watch your intention. When you have interest or you can generate some sort of interest and there's a good intention there, that's really going to help you to get going and stay going towards your tasks. So again, that intention might be something like, I want to have friends over for dinner, or I want to get my car in the garage because my car is worth a lot of money and most definitely worth more collectively than everything in my garage. And I don't want it to depreciate so quickly. Or I really just want to learn how to get along a little bit easier with some of my colleagues. What's my intention here? And then we have the big why. This goes along with that intention. What is your reason for wanting to do this thing that you're wanting to do? Whether it's decluttering, whether it's getting a schedule for yourself, or getting through a big project at work, or arriving early to meetings, whatever it is, you want to tap into the why and go pretty deep here. I go pretty deep with my clients so that we're really clear on why the effort is worth it in the first place. And if you can get excited or get attached to that why, you're more likely to succeed in these pieces. So, this is the focus piece. And I want to mention also values and action. This is called the VIA strengths. And I don't know if a lot of people have heard of this. They've heard of Myers-Briggs and some other systems. This values and actions can be really handy. Essentially, uh, 55 different researchers came together with Martin Seligman and one of his colleagues instigated this whole thing where they brought all these researchers together to figure out what helps people to thrive. And they looked cross-culturally, they looked across religion, they looked across philosophy, psychology, history, and came up with a lot of data, put it together, and found out that there are 6 virtues that everyone has. And there are 24 character strengths based off of those virtues. And so some people might say, well, why are you bringing this up? Well, these are strengths that are inherent to you, these 24, inherent to everybody. Some will rise to the top as signature strengths for you, some will be a little bit weaker. Self regulation, I'm told, is usually down at the bottom for people, even those who do not have ADHD and the impulsivity. But you can tap into these and see how can you utilize them and potentially even come up with a formula of when I use this strength and this strength, I'm able to get to my goal over here, even though that particular task or action is not necessarily the easiest thing for me. And you can go to their website. It's free. You can go through their questionnaire. They've had, I don't even know how many, tens of thousands. It might, yeah, I think it's might be 50,000 people. I don't know. It might be more than that now of people all over the world who've taken this, and it will email you your results. And this can help you tap into your intention. So, for instance, some of them might be love of learning, appreciation of beauty and excellence, love. I mentioned self regulation, and all sorts of other ones as well. Humor is one of them. And so you can tap into these along with that intention to really get going here and get into action. The book here that you see on the left, this is one of the main books. There's a lot of books dealing with this subject matter. But even just taking the quiz can be really interesting. The strengths that you have tend to stay steady throughout your life unless you have a major change. So if you are single, then you get married, have a kid, it might shift a bit. But predominantly, they will stay the same throughout. So I was just working with a coaching client a few weeks ago, and they took this the questionnaire, got their results, and we were able to work with those and look at a history of all the successes that they had had in life and use that to propel them forward with some tasks in the future that were not quite that were challenging, right? So this is a very powerful tool that you can use. I like this quotation. It's a bit long. I will be quiet for a minute for those of you who like to read. I just found it really interesting from the book, Organizing for the Creative Person, about whether or not you're going to do something. And I'll look at the chat while you guys are reading that. And this quotation will be in the slide, the PDF that's going to be coming afterwards as well. So I'm not going to take the time to read it because it's a long one. But it's the last time I showed this at a presentation, it really blew someone's mind. So this is a really interesting piece, a different way to think about tasks and what you're doing and why. Okay. So now we're going to go into focus. So this is similar to that last one. It's about focusing, sustaining, and shifting attention to tasks. So with the sustaining, if there's high interest, no problem, right? We can focus on something. A lot of people can hyper focus for hours at a time and lose track of time, forget to eat, do all these different things because they are so laser focused. And that's because the interest is high. Now, when the interest is low, sustaining this focus can be a lot harder. So there are there's a lot of things you can do, but I wanted to focus on these items that you could do to help yourself in terms of that focus. The one is not losing more than 15 minutes at a time. This one's really big. And I get a lot of pushback from my clients on this because they say, what can I possibly get done in 15 minutes? But it's not about what you get done. It's about what you are doing and letting yourself know, like, this is the right thing to be doing. This is the action I want to take, and reinforcing it. Additionally, if you time yourself, set a timer for 15 minutes, and that timer is on you. If your cell phone's in your pocket, or if you have a timer that's in your pocket or on a lanyard, that doesn't stay in a room and then you leave the room and you don't hear the buzzer. But when it goes off after 15 minutes, if you find yourself doing something completely different than you wanted to be doing, that buzzer will go off. And as long as you can hear it, you've only lost 15 minutes at a time instead of losing an hour or 2 hours at a time. So this can be a huge boon to productivity in terms of not losing it as much time, right? The other thing to watch out for is to say you're cut off. I'm cut off. I'm done. I know that I cannot, if something is not inherently interesting, then I cannot sustain the focus longer than 20 minutes, a half hour. You don't want to push yourself continually to keep going, even though that's going to be what you're going to want to do, because for a lot of folks, they might say to themselves, well, I'm finally motivated, I'm activated, I'm doing it now. I don't know when I'm going to get this energy back, so I have to barrel through this whole thing right now. But you'll get diminishing returns if you try to focus longer than you're able to. So you want to know ahead of time, how much time can I devote to this before I just start to get tired and the efforts are not worth it anymore. There are also a whole bunch of different apps to help you stay focused. One of them is called Forest. I've used a lot of these, just testing them out. I haven't found one that I absolutely love, but Forest is cute. The concept is essentially that when you need to focus on something, you use your phone and you start a session, and it will grow a little tree for you or a bush. And essentially, you're trying to grow a forest. If you lose your focus, you kill a tree and you could kill your whole forest. So it gamifies this reinforcement to stay focused as much as you can. A lot of times technology can be really disruptive. So what a lot of people don't know is that your cell phone can go on grayscale, just like an old-fashioned newspaper, not the Sunday comics that might have been colored, but gray and or black and white, and that's it. And all of a sudden, it becomes a lot less interesting. And I have definitely tested this, and I remember the first time I did it, it went to gray, and I went to do what I typically do, maybe reading some news articles. All of a sudden, it was so much less interesting. It was fascinating. So this really does work as another tool that you can use. A lot of my clients will use podcasts as long as it's not interacting too much with a high level brain activity that they need all their focus for, or turn on the TV or have music on. White noise is something that can help as well. Sometimes music, but without any lyrics, can help. So Insight Timer is an app that you can use for meditation, but they also have a lot of different types of background noise that you can use, even rivers or birds chirping, what have you. And that can be really nice and calming, especially if you're feeling anxious about whatever activity it is that you need to do. It can help calm you down. And the sheets, I say here, they're more than for sleeping. So this is specific to organizing. If you are feeling visually overwhelmed by everything that you have to do, you can literally take a sheet or a blanket, put it over the areas that are distracting you, and let it stay there while you're focused only on maybe this square foot or a few square feet worth of space to declutter. And by having that sheet over everything, you're able to keep your focus on this area and not focus on those other pieces of clutter that are really making it hard to focus on what you're doing right now. I also, this next one, the move to another room. I always call this the move to another room box. And I use this tactic again with people I'm organizing with. And essentially, what most people want to do when they start decluttering is, oh gosh, I got this bill here. Let me go put this on my bed or on my desk right now on top of everything, because if I don't, I'm going to forget. And what happens is they go to the other room and inevitably something else will pop up into their vision, get their attention, and they're off to the races. I've had to go find people sometimes 20 minutes in and say, okay, just wanted to double check that you're okay. And maybe you had to do something important, but maybe you just got distracted, and I need to help pull you back into what we were doing. So this can be really important. You take a box, and anything that needs to get moved to another room or taken to work or taken anywhere out of the current area you're working on just goes into this box. And that way you're not being distracted back and forth all the time. And then towards the end of the session, give yourself enough time to sprinkle these items back at least as close as they can go to the general area where you want them to be and where the other items are, which may be two different things, right? So that can be very helpful with that focus piece. And also having a notepad near you or your phone, something where you can outsource the ideas and the thoughts that pop up in your head so they don't continue to bombard you as you're trying to focus. So for instance, I have a dry erase board. I have actually multiples of them. This is one I have right now. So when I'm doing work at my computer, if a thought pops in my head and I forgot to do something, it's getting written down here because the initial gut level reaction is to jump up and go do that thing. And who knows how long that will take, right? So by parking it here, I can trust that I'm not going to forget about it. And then when I'm at a good stopping point, I can go back to this, see what I've written down and schedule it, put it in my calendar, put it in my planner, whatever it is my system is, to make sure I don't forget about those things. And so that helps with that focus piece as well. So shifting attention, this one can be interesting too. It it can be hard to focus, but sometimes we can hyper focus, and then it's really difficult or challenging to shift attention to the other thing that you needed to do. So maybe you didn't want to do your taxes, but all of a sudden you're finally on a roll and you're feeling good. The interest is there because you're getting things done, or for whatever reason. And you forget that at a certain time you need to go to an appointment. And so you barrel through that time and then you're late or have to reschedule the appointment entirely. That shifting of focus can be challenging. So we need something to cut through that focus. And we need something more than someone who's a neurotypical might just look at their schedule and have a good eye with their clock and kind of keep an eye on the time. But for those with ADHD, again, it's the now and the not now. That time blindness can be tricky, or even noticing the time. So you can, again, use a lanyard that's around your neck that has a buzzer on it. You can use smartwatches. These days, these can be really handy. A lot of people have smartwatches, and the haptics are the vibrations, and you could set a certain vibration tone, and that can hopefully help kick you out of whatever you're doing so that you have a moment to pause and think about, oh gosh, yeah, I need to give myself time now to go to that appointment. So that can help with that shifting of attention as well. And then we're getting into effort. There's a lot involved here as well. So regulating alertness, sustaining effort, and processing speed. So with regulating alertness, a lot of times when things are boring for those with ADHD, it can become tiring to the point where people are almost falling asleep. And it's not because maybe they might have gotten a fabulous amount of sleep the night before, but they are simply not activated. Their brain, the dopamine piece is not activated enough to keep them alert. So again, music can be really helpful here. Perhaps getting up, taking a short walk, or potentially just moving from one room to another, quickly calling a friend, anything to anything that typically helps you to elevate your energy will help there. And also having the upbeat music might help you to stay awake during that task that is potentially less interesting. And then in terms of sustaining the effort, I like to say you don't want to sprint a marathon. And what I mean by that is I'll give you an example to make this the easiest way to explain this. A client might say, I want to declutter my whole garage. I'm going to do it this weekend. I'm going to barrel through it. And they're going to be sprinting, going as fast as they can, laser focus, because they've got the dopamine high enough that they can focus now at will for as long as they need to, and potentially hyper focus. The challenge, though, is that this quote unquote weekend decluttering project is a marathon. And I don't know anyone who can sprint an entire marathon. Now, they're very fast runners, but they have to pace themselves because it's big. Running a marathon is long. So you want to be careful not to set yourself up for failure by trying to sprint the full gamut of an entire project, because most likely what will happen is you'll burn out. A lot of my clients end up burning out, or maybe they got through that entire weekend of decluttering, but they weren't able to finish. And they don't get back to it for months, maybe because they're too busy, or it could be because there's a part of them that never wants to have to do that again because they remember how hard it was when they tried to sprint through the whole weekend, barreling through the whole project. So what you want to do instead is create these sprints for yourself. And you can artificially create those, but also have breaks in between so that you can sprint again. You don't have to methodically and slowly run this marathon all the time. You could be like a sprinter, but you need to take rest in between to regain your energy so that you can do another sprint. Again, you can tie your efforts into the VIA strengths and intention. We spoke about that already. And watch about how much you're trying to bite off in terms of biting off more than you can chew. Sometimes, in terms of decluttering, a drawer is too much to start with, and people won't start there because that is too intimidating. So they might need to start with a half of a drawer or a third of a drawer, or in terms of any other type of thing that someone's trying to do every day, like get up a half hour earlier to get work done while their family's sleeping. Um, they might not start by going to bed a half hour earlier. That might not be realistic. Maybe they get to bed a minute or two earlier and they slowly back into that new habit. You could also use competition. So I've had a lot of clients who have worked with other people, both my coaching clients and my organizing clients, and started some competitions to kind of boost each other up and see who can declutter more, or who can get through an area more quickly. How much did you donate? And and that can sometimes, if you're the type of person who likes a good old-fashioned competition, then that could be helpful as well. So that is most of the effort piece. We've also got processing speed. And what we mean by this, or what Thomas Brown means by this, excuse me, is how quickly we can analyze and work with data in our head. There are fast processors and there are slow processors, and there's not a right or wrong way, and there are benefits and challenges to both. But especially for things that are boring, it can take longer to get through it. For instance, if you're reading a book and it's a book that you have to read for work or what have you, but it's not like an exciting novel, you might need to take longer to do it because you're processing it more slowly. Maybe you're having to reread certain portions because you read them, but you didn't get them in the way you wanted to. One way that I've told many of my clients about is tripling your estimates of how long you think something's going to take. And a lot of times people get really disappointed first saying, "Oh my gosh, that's so much longer than I thought it was going to take. I don't I don't want to have to think about doing that particular thing for that long." Why this is helpful is because most of the time, folks, especially with ADHD, have that time blindness issue where they're not necessarily skilled at estimating time and how long things will take unless they've done a time audit on activities that are repetitive in nature and they've written this down so they really know what's going on. But a lot of times you might underestimate something. Oh, that'll be easy. Let me just do XYZ. That'll take a half hour. If you triple it, or even quadruple it for some people, you are then more likely to get to your goal on time and potentially even have some free time, which is a great win, rather than continually setting yourself up for a deadline that's just not realistic because there's more involved and there's more pieces that you may be forgetting about as you're going through this project. So by tripling that time or quadrupling it, you're building in time for some of these things that you might be forgetting. And in terms of the organizing realm, 30 minutes of decluttering is not 30 minutes of decluttering. It's about 15 minutes of decluttering. And the reason here is that when we're decluttering, things get messy. They get messier temporarily. Uh, but what a lot of people forget to do or don't know to do is that they need to spend time tidying up at the end. Even if things are not going to land exactly where they are, the project may not be nearly done, it might just be started. They need time to tidy up, put things away so they're not on the floor or in the way because they have everyday living, still need to use that space. Write themselves notes as to where they left off, label things, put those things together, and that takes time. So you want to lop off about 10, 15 minutes so that you have time to do that, because otherwise you might end up with piles on the floor and you end up having a hectic week and you can't get back to it, and it somehow the piles don't make sense anymore when you finally do get back to it, or kids or someone else has messed up the piles and stacked them up somewhere so they could get by. So that's what that piece is there. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, and I think we're holding questions till the end, but Lori, feel free to jump in if there is something that is coming up frequently that needs to be addressed.
There are a few questions. Do
Great.
you want to answer them now or
Yeah, I can answer maybe if
okay.
two, I can do like two of them. I think that would be okay.
Okay, it's not from the Q&A. I keep asking the participant to keep the question, to move the question to Q&A.
Ah,
But there are some just put in the chat, but I just saw one in the Q&A now. But I'll read the first one that came in
okay.
through chat. Um, what if you're unclear about what you want? Is there a way to figure it out if you're not sure what you want?
I'm not sure if I understand. Maybe they might mean like not sure what you want the end result to be.
Okay,
Um,
I think it's Frank. He just raised, I'm gonna let him explain his question.
okay.
Um, so Frank, you can unmute yourself now.
So the question was regarding one of the things you talked about was like having, a purpose in mind, like, oh, I need to do this so I can get to that, so I can achieve
Right.
this goal. And if you're unclear on what the bigger goal is, how can you like do that? Like I have all these projects, but I'm not sure how to link it to the bigger goal of like maybe having people in my apartment or something like that. It just feels like this daunting should. So, is there any
Ah.
insight you can give in terms of figuring out the goal itself, let alone the steps to get there?
Yeah, I'll give you one tip, and I've been doing this for 10 years. I do it with folks at the very beginning, so I'm well versed at doing it. It might feel a little odd at first for you to try it, but you can ask yourself why. You can write down, I want to get this done, and then why? Why is this important? And then hopefully you're able to answer why. So you pick out what's the most important. Like I want to declutter my bedroom. Okay, why is that bedroom so important to declutter? And you might come up with an answer, well, I'm getting poor sleep and I'm running late to work and I'm worried about not getting a promotion at my job. And it's because I have too much on my bed. I can't sleep on it. Okay, what's so important about getting work to work on time? And then you keep picking the most important thing in that phrase and drilling down on it until you get to a level that feels much more, um, you feel more emotionally connected to it, or it feels more motivating. And that can be helpful. Great question. Thank you. Laura, I think I can take one more.
Okay. Another question from chat. Can I put the sheet over me so I can focus on what is in front of me? I
Oh,
think
put
you,
it over yourself, meaning what? I think
yeah.
that's what they're asking, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I put the sheet over me so I can focus on what is in front of me?
I think anything would go as long as you're safe and you can breathe and you're not going to trip over something because you can't see what you're doing. As long as you're safe, and things don't have to be done in a necessarily in a conventional way. You just want to make sure that you're safe and you're able to do things in a way that works for you. But Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that. It's an interesting way to do it, but that would definitely narrow down your focus. Another thing you can do, it's in one of the books, is get a paper towel roll or a toilet paper roll and stick it up to your eye and look around the room. And it's going to narrow your focus and you can land on one little spot. Like right now, I'm looking across my room. I see another bookshelf over there with a few books. And that's really all I can focus on. And so that would be what I would pick to go work on. So that works similarly to the white sheet concept. Interesting question. I've never heard that before. So that's just make sure you're not tripping over everything and then you can breathe. Do it safely. Okay, those are great questions. Thank you. We'll keep going here, but I wanted to make sure people have this concept in mind because it can be really liberating for a lot of people to see this model and understand their ADHD and realize what's going on. And oh gosh, it's not just me. This is just what's going on with the executive functioning. So the fourth one is emotion. And again, this is not part of the diagnostic criteria. I cannot diagnose anyone at all. So let me just say that I'm not a clinician. But I do know that that emotion regulation piece is not in the criteria to get a diagnosis. But this seems to be coming up quite a bit according to the researchers and the clinicians who are working with people. So this managing frustration and modulating emotions, this modulating means kind of like regulating your emotions. And that frustration piece can happen. And a lot of people who work with those with ADHD say that emotions can feel a lot bigger than it does for someone who's neurotypical. It's not to say that someone who's neurotypical never gets mad or excited, but through my learning from these experts and also through my coaching program, I've learned that if someone's feeling a big emotion, they are feeling it. They're not making it bigger than it needs to be necessarily. They're really feeling it that deeply. So in terms of the frustration, I am always trying to do things as simply as possible with clients. What can you cut out of the process without affecting the quality of what you're trying to do or without meaning that you cannot get to your goal? So, for instance, with laundry, a lot of people will do laundry for the whole family and they'll go through and sort it and then wash it and dry it, maybe according to colors or something. And then they will have to go back afterwards and sort it again. And that can make the laundry really annoying for people and frustrating to do. And then laundry piles up because there's too many steps. So here you might potentially slash the steps by never mixing people's laundry. Each person gets their own load of laundry and it goes right back to where they keep their laundry. In one of the more recent books that I read, they mentioned potentially everyone's clothes live in the laundry room in cubbies. And everyone just goes there to get dressed, especially with the little kids, so that the clothes never even have to move back and forth too far. So you can keep on top of laundry, which is a challenge for a lot of people with ADHD. And then you want to look for little details that can make something just a little bit more annoying to the point that it's just not going to happen. So I list a bunch of things here in terms of the organizing realm: bins that are broken, shelves that are too tall and you're still trying to use them, but you don't have a ladder, or it's too annoying to get at your ladder every time you want to go up and put something away up high. Or you have a dresser that is really hard to open. It doesn't open well, it doesn't close well. And so the clothes never go in the dresser because it's annoying, right? And so I look for those friction points when I'm working with people. And I will say, gosh, this looks hard. If I had to deal with this every day, I might never put my laundry away because I wouldn't want to deal with this drawer. Can we think about making this easier for you? Maybe the dresser isn't right. Maybe you like hanging your clothes instead of putting them in a dresser. Maybe you just need a new dresser or what have you. So you want to look for those friction points because there might be a different way that you can do it and eliminate that friction so that it's not the last detail that just blows up whatever it is you're intending to do. And then regulating the emotions. So this boring piece is huge. We talked about this before. You can also gamify with competitions, use your imagination. For instance, thinking about a craft room and organizing it like your favorite craft store to gain more interest. A lot of people, in terms of the organizing realm, will document their wins once they know that this is something they could do to help them keep their interest up. Document how many inches or feet worth of papers they're getting rid of, or how many bags of clothing they've donated. You can do this in all sorts of ways. How many pounds have you gotten out of your house? And it can be interesting to see that grow. Again, you can play the music. One of the books said practice being bored. So naturally, all of us humans don't like being uncomfortable, so we'll move away naturally from discomfort. This book, it was quite interesting. It said, try to get more used to being uncomfortable, and then it won't be such a huge deterrent. So that boredom maybe won't be as important as it was before in terms of whether or not you do something. If you think it's going to take forever, you want to challenge that. It's most likely not going to take forever. And with a time audit, not simply, but you track what you're doing for a few days or a week or longer, especially with those repetitive activities, to see how long they actually take, because we might be grossly under or overestimating how long it takes. And that's going to help us to plan our day better. So, for instance, when I was making my coffee a certain way in the morning, I found out it took about 6 minutes. And so during that time, what could I do? Not that I have to do anything, but if I wanted to do something else, I had that time available. Or how long does it really take to do laundry? Um, Especially if the laundry is not in your apartment, you have to walk to wherever it is. You maybe have to get quarters or find your credit card wherever it is. You have to wait for things to dry or hang them up if they have to hang dry. There's all sorts of little tasks in between that we might forget, and those can add up in terms of time, so that when you see how long something actually takes, you know the full time. So when you go to schedule your days next time, you're not smushing too much into one given day and setting yourself up for feeling bad at the end of the day that you didn't get enough done because it was impossible to do all of that. So that's a big one. And again, really small steps that are so small they feel ridiculous. That's going to help with the activation piece and potentially with the boredom as well. If you're feeling overwhelmed, there's too many steps, it's too hard, you can ask a friend, someone who might be good at this. Talk it out loud. In coaching, this can be really helpful to get that clarity to talk through things, figure out what it is you're going to do, breaking things into, again, really small steps. And you want to be careful for systems that are too difficult. So if they're too difficult, they're not likely to take place. If your filing system is gorgeous, um, but there's too many steps to get a paper either pulled out or put back in, it's not going to work. Or if in order to pay your taxes, you have to take all these different steps that are not necessarily important to the system you set up, is this beautiful Excel form that you don't necessarily need, you might be less likely to use it if there's too much in there. Okay, now we're on to memory. So there's this thing called working memory. This is the short-term memory that we need to use in the moment to get done what we need to get done. So the easiest example I always use is a math equation. We have to remember two numbers to get to the third number if we're going to do it in our head, right? And apparently we have about four slots for information in our working memory. And as soon as any new data piece comes into our head, it's going to knock off one of those four, which is why it's so important to have a phone or something to get these thoughts out of your head and put it somewhere else so that you don't forget. So, for instance, a lot of folks will say, oh, I'll remember to do this task later. And I will always say, trust me, you're most likely not going to remember. You might have a fabulous memory, but there's so much going on in your life. Let's set up your future self for success by giving them a reminder, immediately putting the scheduling the donation drop off in your calendar for a day that makes sense. So it's not just something that has to be done later. And you can use a notebook or an app. A lot of times I talk to clients about putting different parts into the notebook that they can use all your information in one place. So why are you doing this project? We talked about that earlier. What are the projects and what are the tasks, which are different? A project is multiple tasks. According to David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done, a project is anything that is two or more tasks. So that's different than projects. And if you're mixing up your projects and your tasks together on one big list, a lot of stuff's not going to get done because it feel overwhelming because you had the entire project on your list, like get taxes done rather than the very first baby step. You can write down what kind of rewards you'd like to use for yourself, document those wins that we talked about earlier, any deadlines you have. And also, when you are moving to do one thing to another, and it could be physically moving one thing to another area, or I need to pay this bill, you can repeat it out loud to yourself because we speak much more slowly than we think. And it forces your brain to focus. You could say, I'm putting this paper on the desk. I'm putting this paper on the desk. And you literally repeat that as long as you're going to the desk to put it down. So you're more likely to remember that piece. Again, those loud, audible reminders or visual. So really bright sticky notes, and they will get dull. So you'll have to dull in terms of you'll start to not see them anymore. They'll become part of the environment. So eventually you will need to change the color or the placement or something about it to re-energize that reminder. Okay, and then accessing recall, this can be a huge one too. Leave yourself more crumb trails than you need. So next time you pick up this project, you can get back to it without taking any more time to reorient yourself. What do I have to do? And trying to remember what your last step was. You can even date your notes as well with the year. I've definitely not put the year on years ago and came across one of my notes and it was not helpful because it didn't have the year on there, right? Write down more than you think you're going to remember because in the moment, everything is logical and makes sense to you. But when you come back to this project much later, or even the next day, you might completely lose context and it can be harder to recall it. So leave yourself notes wherever they may be. They don't have to be on paper, but leave yourself a crumb trail so you can get back to exactly where you were and not waste time. Okay, and then we're on to the action piece. This is where you're in action. How do you monitor your action and regulate, right? This is potentially where that inhibition challenge comes in. So with monitoring, it can be really challenging to look at what you're doing because you're in the moment. One of the things you can do is, if we're talking about decluttering, you could take a picture. So where are you? Where did you leave off? That can help you to monitor, am I getting rid of enough stuff so that I can use this dining room table the way I want to? Or am I just moving things around on the table or to other rooms and nothing's really leaving and overall I still have too much stuff? And I can't get organized because there's too much stuff. So a photo can help you show your progress. Um, you can also think about, where have you noticed there's less friction in one area of your life? That could be because you are succeeding in doing a habit or doing something repetitively, and you haven't noticed it because things are just easier. But if you slow down, if you learn how to pause, take a deep breath, you can potentially then think about, I wonder why this is easier, and get curious, and then find that information out. In terms of regulating your action, not letting impulsivity run the day, lots of different things you can do here. One is body doubling. This is a fabulous tool that a lot of people are using now, even neurotypicals, where essentially you have a task you want to do. It's either hard or boring. You don't want to do it. So you either call a friend, or you get involved. Some of these companies are free. Some of them you pay a membership fee, and you sign up at a certain time to join, and you're more likely to get done with that person either in the room or on the video, even though they're not helping you get it done. Just their presence, their quiet presence, is enough to help you get it done. So this is a huge tactic. It works. External accountability. If you're not getting to something, it might be your why. Well, I don't know. Why do I want to clear off that dining room table? Well, maybe because I want to have my friends over. And if I have my friends over once a month, then I cannot clutter up anything enough in 1 month's time that I can't declutter in 1 month. So you're not going too long without backtracking too long. Though, is one worth five? This is also in terms of decluttering. When you're acquiring things, that impulsivity, do you have the space for it? It's not necessarily, at least for my clients, my organizing clients, it's not one-to-one. That's when you're at maintenance phase. And if you're looking to reduce the load so you can get organized, it's at least 2 for 1. Most of the time, it's even 5 items that need to go out for every 1 item you bring in of the same volume. And it might be an even higher ratio. So think about that. When you see something, if you want it, it might really not be worth it when you think about having to get rid of 5 similar volume, in terms of volume or size, items in your home that you already like. Um, Also, if you can tap the brakes, you learn how to pause. Pausing, whether it's noticing what's in your body and taking a deep breath, whatever helps you to pause, that will give you a moment to combat the impulsivity and to be able to self-regulate again. So you want to be able to give yourself time to see these things as they happen. So this is Thomas Brown's model for executive functioning, and I think it's a wonderful way to look through ADHD and figure out what's really going on under the hood. I think I can take one quick question now, if there is one, and then we'll get into the method for decluttering.
Okay. I see some questions and comments in the Q&A. I'll start by reading the questions for you to answer. Question from Debbie. In the activating section, can you explain the theme's motivation part more?
Mhm.
Detective, in the power of interest part, what is EF disappearance? And where can I buy haptics, buzzer, or lanyard? Any recommendation for best ones?
Um, so the first one, using themes. So if you can create a theme or even like a storyline for whatever that task is that you're having a hard time getting started on, you might make it interesting enough, like make yourself the main character in a movie. So in this case, the example I used was maybe finding something you did wrong in your taxes and you really don't want to do it, you can literally think about yourself being the sleuth, and maybe in one of those noir films um, back in the day, and having the whole outfit, and you're going on a quest to find out what's wrong. So that might raise your interest level to get a theme or a story built. And then in terms of the haptics, there are a lot of different products out there. I think one of the easiest, that's not cheap, but a lot of people are doing now, are the smartwatches, because it will buzz and it'll do a lot of other things for you too, but it will buzz on your arm. But you can look online too for other options that can help. Both great questions. I'm going to keep going here, and then we'll have time afterwards for more questions. So in terms of the process for decluttering, I wanted to dive into this a little bit more quickly than I do because I've done a lot of productivity piece today, but I use the acronym of STOP, S-T-O-P, as in stop the clutter. And so the steps are to sort, to toss, then to organize, and then to propagate your success. So let's go through these. And you can use this for any organizing project, whether it's paper, large clutter, clutter on your computer. So with the sorting piece, a lot of people just dive in and try to make decisions about their stuff. Why not just look at this pile of miscellaneous stuff and make decisions? Well, we want to sort things like with like first. Some people will say, what's going to slow me down? But here's the thing. It's not as much of a heavy cognitive load if you're jumping from one category of items to another and back and forth. Every time you look at a project, that's going to give you brain fatigue a lot faster. If you sort first, you're also going to see what your volume is. Now, you might not be able to get to all your volume in one fell swoop, but if you can, you're going to see, or if you do it in repetition, you're going to see that probably you have a lot more volume in one category than you thought you did because it's in different places. And that's going to let you know, I've got to get rid of more than I thought I did in order to reach my goals. Also, it can reduce the visual overwhelm because you're only looking at one type of category. And then you want to watch out for macro organizing and micro organizing in terms of your categories. A lot of times you're not going to have enough space to create various categories like I have pens over here and paper over here, and my clothes are going here, and my kitchen groceries are going over here. You might just say anything going in the office is going here and do a macro category. And then when you go back to that office category and the next step, you can categorize a little bit more on the micro category. But you don't want to do too micro, because if you do, everything becomes unique. If you only have one or two things in every category, then of course you're not going to get rid of it because it's special. Whereas if you have 20 items in one category because the category is broader, you're more likely to get rid of things. It also takes more time to manage all these small little categories. So you want to be careful for that piece. And then the toss phase, this is where you're also recycling, shredding, donating, throwing things away, consigning, a lot of different ways that are incorporated here. Keep in mind that the less you keep, the more money you're going to save, because you're not going to have to repurchase things because you have so much in your place that you can't find it and you have to run out and buy things again. And also, the less time it's going to take to maintain your order. It's not going to take you hours every day to declutter or get things back because there's less stuff involved. It might just be a few things to put away instead of 20 things to put away. So keep that in mind as you're getting rid of items. Also remember that hobbies change throughout life. That doesn't mean you failed. If you purchased some sort of a kit to put together a model or to make a scarf or what have you, and you never used it, but now you need to make space in your life for the new hobby, and you don't have enough space to do that because all these past hobbies are crowding you out, it doesn't mean you failed by getting rid of that kit that you never used. It just means you didn't have time for it or interest in it, but it's going to continue to be in your way if you keep it just because you don't want to have a failure under your belt, which is impossible. We do have failures. They're learning points, and there's no way around them. It's how we grow. You can also take a child's view and say, oops, like when a child falls down and they don't hurt themselves, but they're just like, oops, and they kind of laugh to themselves. You can do the same thing. So if you make a mistake, you get rid of something. You will make mistakes along the way. There will be a few items you'll regret, but in the long run, it's still going to be better to have gone through the process than live with the clutter and the space you have now that is getting in the way of all these important life goals that you have. So that's a different way to think about quote unquote mistakes. And watch out for how much time you spend trying to find the perfect home to donate someplace to. For a lot of people, that's a value set, which is fine. But if it's stopping you from actually decluttering, you may want to hold off on donating and donate imperfectly or throw certain things away until you're at the maintenance phase. And at that point, you can spend more time donating things perfectly because you don't have too much stuff. You're not continuing this decluttering project. Also, you might need to get support here if it's becoming too difficult on your own. There's Clutters Anonymous. Buried in Treasures is a program for those who have hoarding disorder or think they have it or have a really hard time letting go. You might want to work with a therapist, professional organizer, ADHD coach. These are all great ways to get support so that you can reach your goals. And then we come to the organize phase. This is what most people are familiar with, where you're deciding what to do with your keepers. Where do I put them? I liken it to a street address. Each of your items are going to have a street address, just like you have a street address, hopefully, that you go back to every day. You don't randomly go 3 doors down and open the door there. You always go back to your same street address. So it's the same thing with your stuff. You also can use street signs to keep with that analogy. These are labels. You don't have to buy a label maker. You can just use masking tape or something else. Just so long as it sticks long enough for you to either learn where things go or they stay there permanently to help you with it or to help family members know and for them to be able to help you put things away. You don't have to use traditional containers. You can repurpose a lot. Just be careful if you're trying to jury rig things too much, it might not work well. So you want to make sure that whatever you do use is simple enough. I, for instance, have a file cabinet that I painted in my 20s. The organization I worked for was getting rid of it. It was just going to get trashed. I had a use for it, and I spent a lot of time painting it. I love it. It's one of my favorite pieces of furniture, and now my clothes live in it. So that is my dresser. It doesn't have to be traditional, but it works very easily. No haute couture systems, meaning as much as you might be tempted to create a calendar with beautiful colors and all these intricacies, just like someone with haute couture would sew on every piece of sequins. You don't want to do that with your systems because you will never, ever want to actually use that system. You'll have fun setting it up, but the dopamine hit will be gone. And then the boring part of having to do it comes into play. And the more complicated a program is, or a system is, the less likely you are to do it. And then in terms of propagating success, we want to continue on with our successes. So hopefully once we've gotten the place to where we want it, hopefully maintenance becomes easier. You'll probably backslide from time to time. You might get sick, whatever, something might come up in life, but you have the organizational bones in place. You can also try habit stacking. So for instance, if you don't like doing the dishes, and you figured out it takes 6 minutes to make your coffee in the morning and you're waiting for it instead of picking up your phone, maybe you wash dishes for 6 minutes and you'd probably be surprised at how much you can get done in 6 minutes. You can use apps. There's one called Habitica, which kind of like that Forest app for focus. This one is more for helping you to do a habit in the form of video games. You can also create your own adrenaline. Now, most people with, or a lot of people with ADHD will get their dopamine to a high enough level that they can activate and get started when things have hit a critical level and their anxiety goes up. And that is the way they're used to operating, but it's not fun and it's bad for their heart and their cortisol is raised on a chronic level. So you can recreate that adrenaline artificially. You can try to, for instance, beat the clock. If you have to do the laundry or something else, you can try to beat your time last time, which will create a little adrenaline, but not so much that you're getting into anxiety or you're sabotaging yourself because you don't have enough time because you waited too long to do something. You can also try breathing exercises. These really do work. Your body is forced to slow down its nervous system, and it doesn't have a choice but to slow down as you do particular breathing exercises. And that way, this part of your brain can go online again. And that can help, for instance, with things like impulse buys that are going to counteract your success. Additionally, you can make use of deadlines. So a lot of my clients will have their cleaners or have cleaners come to their house every few weeks, or they'll have a game night, or they'll have family over or friends over once a month so that they have an external reason why they have to do something and they're more motivated to do it because other people are involved. So that's really what the success piece is. So this is the process that one would go through with any organizing project that you're trying to work with. So that is pretty much towards the end of my presentation. I want to give you some additional resources. These are a lot of great books. There's so many great books. I've read quite a few. But in terms of ADHD, Smart But Stuck. This is a great book written by Thomas Brown. It's a really nice read because it's based off of his clientele. So it's story based, which is more interesting to read. More Attention, Less Deficit by Ari Tuckman is a huge book. It's about 300 pages, but he writes it in article style so that you can pick up anywhere and just read it quick bits at a time as you need to. And there's repetition there in different parts. So you're not missing anything if you don't read it cover to cover. ADD-Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life is an older book by Judith Kohlberg and Kathleen Nadeau. Judith Kohlberg is one of a longstanding professional organizer in my field. And then Organizing for the Creative Person by Dorothy Lemkel and Dolores Cotter Lamping. So these are some great books to read as well. Russell Barkley is another expert in the field of ADHD. He is recently retired, but he has started a YouTube channel, and every week he reviews new studies that have come out about ADHD and what he thinks about them. So it's nice because he has an inside track as to what's a good study and what maybe isn't. It's an interesting YouTube to watch. And he does them every week. There's also my newsletter that I periodically send out. You are welcome to join that. It's on my website. And I go through a lot of this information, other information. I have done body doubling in the past, group body doubling, different things. I'll experiment with different things and put it out in the newsletter sometimes, see what sticks, and just have fun with it. So lots of information there as well. So what you want to think about as you go forward here is, what have you learned that's different now when you think about either your HD or your child's ADHD or your partner's ADHD, your loved one's ADHD? And what do you think you'll do differently, especially based on Thomas Brown's model and the STOP method? So you want to think about that. You probably have already been thinking about it throughout the session, but give it some thought there to think, what do I really want to use? It might be only one or two things, and that's fabulous. So that concludes my presentation. And Laura, I'm wondering if there are any other questions
Yes.
that popped up.
Yes.
Great.
There are a lot of questions.
Okay.
I don't know if we have time to finish them all, but I'll try as many as we could. Okay, do you have any tips for maintaining or restoring focus when you get disrupted by other people in your household? I find that I get very frustrated when my partner breaking my focus when I've just managed to start doing something I needed to get done, and I'm not sure how best to handle that type of situation.
Yeah. In my coaching program, the instructors called it shattered focus. It's not like someone neurotypical, you walk right back and you can pick up right where you left off. You shattered, you can't put the pieces back together like a vase that's shattered in a million pieces. So some people have worked out, like their partner comes into the room, they might just say, I'm going to give you a signal like this. I'm not trying to be rude, just 1 minute while I write down somewhere exactly what I was in the middle of doing so that I don't forget what I was doing. You also might talk to them about how hard it is for you to get back into focus, especially if it's something you're not naturally interested in doing. And let them know, I'm going to be busy for this 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So you might try those pieces, definitely writing things down to remember where you left off before interacting with someone. Great question.
Thank you. Any suggestion for how not to beat yourself up over not being able to do the declutter for years, or not saying to yourself that you are just failing at it, which is not motivating?
Yes. Yeah, beating ourselves up is not necessarily going to help. We don't want to Pollyanna our way either, but you want to give yourself enough credit that now you're ready to do something different. You're willing to experiment. It's all an experiment. It doesn't mean you failed. You just want to try something, try some of these tactics, try a tactic, see how it goes. And the past is the past. But think about if you can emotionally connect with that future of what you can gain by going through it and succeeding this time around, that could be amazing. Also, watch out for perfectionism. That can really stymie progress.
I have a gray out setting on my phone, but I always override it. How do I stop myself from overriding things that are meant to help me?
That's that impulse control, and it can be really challenging at times. I understand. You might try what they said in a model in the program I was part of, the power of the pause. It's really this entire model built on taking a deep breath, figuring out what's going on in your body so that you're feeling something different, you're identifying what it is, and that taking some breaths, slowing down your system so that you give yourself enough space in terms of time to think about, is this really the decision you want? You can also do something like, well, this is something in it right now. You can't quite see it, but there's something called a phone lock. You can get them online and set up ahead of time to literally lock your phone, and it won't unlock until the time that you've preset it to unlock. And there's a little hole in there, God forbid, in case there's an emergency, you can answer your phone.
Thank you. I found that sometimes I do non-urgent, least stressful tasks, for example, cleaning my room, responding to email, etc. When I have a large, very daunting task to do, for example, writing an essay for school, do you have any tips on how I can prioritize the more difficult task first?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you something that's a little bit different than probably what you've heard before, which is it might be okay to do that small task. Remember, we talked about the activation, getting moving, getting yourself revved up, your engine revved up. You could do one of those small tasks as long as you stop yourself from going into hyper focus there. That might get you enough momentum, even if the movement is just thoughts in your brain type of movement, enough to do that small task for a few minutes and then be able to glide into the more important task. You might also be trying to bite off more than you can chew. Maybe that project that you have, you're just saying, I need to write a paper or I need to do this or that. And there's no just about it. There might be 20 steps involved. And even those 20 steps, when you look at the first one, if it feels too intimidating or boring, you might need to break it down to 2 steps so that it's more tolerable or less intimidating.
Okay, I've noticed that I sometimes go into a sort of hyper mode where I get a ton down, like cleaning everything at once, but I really struggle with consistency. This
Mhm.
has affected my ability to follow through on long-term projects and even contributed to job loss. I also see it show up in areas like working out or keeping my place less cluttered. Do you have any suggestions for staying on task with long-term goals when motivation comes in bursts like this?
Yeah, so I mentioned before about that sprinting a marathon piece. You might be a sprinter, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to give yourself breaks. You don't want to, if you get the motivation up to go do all your laundry and it's 4 weeks worth and you're exhausted afterwards, you've sprinted too long. So you need to make a shorter sprint. Um, Additionally, so you want to give yourself rests in between those sprints. And uh, I'm not a job advisor, but there are certain careers that some people have found who have ADHD, which are more conducive to that sprinting, to that burst of energy, and the more methodical details can be done by someone else. So some people have been able to find that piece. You can also use that body doubling piece where you're pulling other people in to get involved, not necessarily that they're helping you do these things, but maybe they have something they don't like to do and you body double each other to get those things done. So that can help with that piece too. So watch out to make sure you're not doing sprints that are too long.
How do you prioritize when you feel overwhelmed?
Various ways that you can do that. The one that's coming to mind is not something that I talk about too much, but it's an exercise by Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4 Hour Work Week many, many years ago. He has an exercise called the fear setting exercise. One of them is if you're overwhelmed and you don't want to do something, it's an exercise you do to see what's really going to happen if you don't do it. And sometimes that helps with clarity around, oh my gosh, I really need to do this thing I'm afraid to do because if I don't, the ramifications are even worse than doing this thing I'm afraid of. And in terms of figuring out those priorities, you might just pull out sticky notes and put them on a wall. Some people are visual, they need to see it differently. So if they write it on a list, it's too hard. You might just write the things you have to do and start literally plopping them on a wall and moving them up or down versus just strictly based on their priority level. You could also get help from another person, maybe a friend or a family member who's really good at this priority piece to help you with that as well.
Can you please explain more about monitoring?
Monitoring. This is really when you are watching, kind of like that metacognition people talk about, kind of watching what you're doing while you're doing it, which can be difficult to do, right? But monitoring the activity you're doing. Are you stopping when you need to stop? Are you creating a transition so that you can then go into the next thing you want to do? Are you leaving on time? Are you getting started on time? Are you doing the thing you meant to do, or are you on your phone down a rabbit hole and 2 hours later you lost the opportunity to do the thing you wanted to do? So that's where it's monitoring your actions and your activities.
Thank you. How does tossing give you more money?
So generally speaking, at least with the clients I have, the volume of items is quite large. The more you have, the harder it becomes to find things because you run out of space and things get piled on top of each other. When that happens, I've had many clients tell me before I become involved and teach them different skill sets, they've had to run out and repurchase whatever it was they couldn't find because they needed to use it in the pinch for a project they had going on and they couldn't find it. So they repurchased. So that could save you potentially money in the long run. I know it can be difficult to get rid of things, especially if you don't have a lot of money. So I don't want to be flippant about that piece. But if you have um, so many things around that you can't utilize your space, it's going to cost you in terms of time and money.
On the toss step, how do you address the someday maybe I might need this, especially when money is tight and you may not be able to repurchase it?
That is a huge one that happens to just about everybody. And I'll give you this different way to think about it that kind of turns that logic on its head, which is important, especially if you don't have money. You're not going to be just chucking things left and right because you don't have the money to repurchase it. So you want to be cognizant of that. But there is the opposite. I've worked with people who don't have a lot of money. Most of my clients don't have a ton of money. The opposite is that you have so many items that you're keeping just in case that you cannot use items that you want to use today because there's no space to use them. And all those possible futures of just in case are crowding out your ability to do the things you want to do in life today. So that's a totally different way to think about your relationship with those just in case items. And you can think about how likely is it that I'm going to need this? Or is there another object that could serve the purpose of this one and another thing? So that I don't need two things, I only need one thing because it can do the task of both.
What were the supports for our four perfect homes versus progress? I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention to,
No,
your
that's okay,
presentation.
but I don't think I heard that part correctly. If you could
Uh,
repeat it.
okay. What were the supports for help for perfect homes for versus progress? If you can look into Q&A,
Oh,
it's
can I? Let's
yeah,
see if
you
I can
can
do that without, let's
yeah,
see.
Deb from Debbie. What were the supports
Q&A.
for help
Ah,
for
here.
perfect homes?
Is that towards the bottom or middle?
In the middle, from Debbie.
From Debbie, Debbie Lynn.
Yeah,
She's got a few different,
480.
what were the supports for help for perfect homes versus, she's using the word for, the number four for 40 FOR. So instead of, for instance, a lot of clients wanted divert as much from landfill as possible, which is a value point that's highly laudable, and I try to do the same. But you can get so caught up in trying to find the perfect place to donate a sweater that has holes in it that the typical places won't take, that you spend hours and hours and hours researching, come to find out maybe there's one place that'll take it, but it's the amount of time and energy and effort and potentially money it's going to take you to get that item to the right place is better spent continuing to make progress, decluttering other items and letting that one item go imperfectly rather than perfectly, because it's just going to keep you stuck. Rather than rabbit holing down into research every time there's something that you feel guilty about getting rid of because it can't get donated, you could be continuing to get closer to your goals.
Okay, thank you. There are many more questions, but the time now it's 4:38. Um, do you mind staying for just 5 more minutes and
Yeah,
answer
of
a few more
course.
questions? We,
Absolutely.
we can't get to all of them. There are 14 open, but I'll try to read questions from different participants. Because there are participants who ask multiple questions. I try to get to questions from different people. Okay, so if goal is to get a job in a tech company that uses AI, I have a background in computer science, but still it's a large, lofty goal that needs lots of study over a long period of time and applying to jobs. What are good bite-sized task and motivation system for this?
So without having this conversation with you, because I don't know necessarily what the steps are for particularly studying, because I'm not in IT, they might be different than other things. But you want to, let's say, I think you said study, if I heard correctly. Let's say you had to study, you had to take 3 courses, and you had to study and read various books. Um, you would you wouldn't just say, for instance, I need to read this book in 2 weeks. Well, that's too big. It feels too overwhelming. You might instead break it down into something so small as Today, I'm going to unwrap the book, open it, and look at the table of contents. And that's all I'm doing today. And tomorrow you do something equally small so that it's really bite-sized chunks small. This all depends, of course, on your deadlines and how much time you do have. But that can help with that piece too. I do know some clients now are starting to use AI more to ask it to how to help them break things down. Um, I know AI is not, thankfully, super powerful, as powerful it's going to be in the future, but they have had success with that. Sometimes they get answers they don't like, but sometimes that can help them break down tasks as well.
Thank you. Any ADHD groups I can join?
Yes, there's one that's called ADDA, ADDA, and I'm forgetting the acronym right now. I became a member as a student, and it's for people who have ADHD. So you can join that. There's a cost. I don't think it's an outrageous cost. Of course, that's relative to everybody here, but um, a lot of people do. They do social events. They do online social events, and they will do webinars and things like that. There's also CHAD. That's one of the biggest organizations that has information, but ADA is one of the social, more kind of chat with people online. There's a lot of that piece there. So those are two good organizations.
Thank you. And on the TOS step, how do you address this? Oh, wait, this one has been answered. Okay,
Okay.
let's see. I will just go back to one of the questions from Debbie earlier. I read it, but I think you probably missed this part. In the power of interest part, what is EF disappearance? I think there is
Oh,
a slide. Yeah.
oh, yes, yes. Executive functioning, poof, disappear. The challenges that you have in those executive functions that we talked about, excuse me, might completely disappear if you're doing something you're interested in. So all of a sudden, maybe you couldn't focus on reading a book that was boring, but all of a sudden you are uh, running and you love to run, and all of a sudden you can focus at will and do what you need to do. And those executive functionings are working as well as they would for a neurotypical because your interest level is high. So the executive functioning challenge disappears with
Okay.
those activities, or is lessened at least.
Okay. I'm surprised to hear a job search question answered as if it were a question about following a prescribed course of study. But the main thing about a job search is you cannot predict when it will be done. It depends on factors outside of one's control. So how can we structure and motivate any project like that, where the size of it is inherently unpredictable? How how can we structure and motivate any project?
Yeah, a big piece of that is going to be the mindset piece. I've worked with people who have been in between jobs and in IT, and that mindset piece can be critical because there is so much that's out of your control with those types of projects or any other type of projects. So uh, focusing on your VIA strengths can help. That's one of those things that is a lot of people don't know about, but figuring out what your signature top strengths are and how you can tap into those. All these things that I talked about before in terms of keeping your interest level going, switching things up so that when things get dull, you can continue breaking down projects into bite-sized pieces so it doesn't feel like this long, monotonous, never-ending project. It's something that's more doable with small pieces. Reward yourself earlier during the process. Lots of things like that.
Thank you so much. There are more questions in the Q&A, but the time is now 4:44. I want to respect your time
Mhm.
and the audience time. Thank you so much, Judith, for sharing all your wisdom, tips, and encouragement with us today. Your ADHD-friendly approach to organization really gives us hope and practical tools to create spaces that help us reach our goals. I also want to thank everybody in the audience for joining us and for your thoughtful questions and engagement. I hope that you are leaving with new ideas and renewed motivation to make meaningful changes in your daily routines and environments. As a reminder, I'll be sending out a follow-up email with the recording link. We recorded this program. I'll send you the recording link. You can rewatch the presentation, and I'll also send you Judith's slide deck and a short feedback survey. We love to hear your thoughts. Take care, everyone. I hope to see you again at another library program soon. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, library. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.